In real world applications, we show more dynamic data in our applications. So it is absolutely necessary to understand how to handle the APIs in our applications. So in this video, we are going to see two use cases. The first one is to make an API call on component loop. The second use case is actually to make an API call on user action. So the first one is you might have seen some applications like, say, for example, Gmail, right? So when you load gmail.com, we show list of emails. So on page load, we make an API call to fetch the emails and we are listing down the emails. And the next one is, say, if you are clicking the particular email, then we make an API call to fetch the details of that particular email and we are showing all the details, right? So these two different use cases we are going to see. So for this video, we are going to use these JSON placeholder APIs. So these are free open source APIs. So in case if you want to uh, learn or if you want to try out with the APIs, right, you can use these APIs. So this JSON placeholder provides a list of APIs and we are going to use this album API. So here if you see, these are the properties available in these APIs. So the ID, title, then URL and thumbnail URL. So let's see the first use case. So we have this demo React component. So while loading this component, we are going to make an API call and we are going to fetch the details and we are going to display the details. So first, we are going to have an ID in our state. So first we are going to have this static ID one. So that will be our default ID use state. The next one is data. So this data is basically once we fetch the API, we are going to store the result in this data. Okay. So next, so we are going to use an use effect to fetch this API. You might know. So basically this use effect with an empty dependency will be called as soon as the first initial load is done, right? So then this use effect will get called. So now after loading our component, then we are going to fetch our API. So technically we can make this API call in the use state as well. Say instead of these empty braces, right? We can make an fetch API and we can update the data. But the problem with that, right? So if you are making this call in the use state, it will block our component rendering and it will wait for the data to get, then our component will render. So this is not the ideal way of doing this. So we want to move that data fetching part to the use effect. So basically we are allowing the component to render. As soon as the component renders, we are going to make the API call. So for making the API call, we are going to use fetch. So only the ID will be dynamic one. Dot then. So this fetch always return an response in the streamed format. So basically you will get an promise and that promise you need to resolve to get the value in the JSON. So then you can set data. So to update the value in the state, right? So we should not actually update the value directly because it's an object. So we are going to, without mutate, we are going to update. So there is an another way. Okay. So in case if there is an error, right, then we need to catch that error also. So for now, I'm just logging out, but we can store this error in a variable or something. Then we can show the error message, appropriate error message to the users. Okay. So now we are on component load, we are making this API. And once the API is successful, we are updating the value in this set data. Okay, so now, so what we are going to do, so if we have this data, so I have actually have some basic CSS already written. So for this demo, we can concentrate only on the data fetching part. We can ignore this CSS. So I'm going to give a class name, album details. Class name, image. So first we are going to render the image URL. And there is a content. In the content, we are going to render two properties. So one is ID, data.id. The other one is title. Okay. So if you see, as soon as this component get rendered, so we are making this API call. And once this API call is successful, we are actually setting that data in the state value. So now, as soon as this state value is available, then we are rendering this part. Okay. So now let's discuss the next use case. So now we are going to have one button. So basically the on click of that button, we are going to increment this ID because as you see, so we have this API. So if the ID is 2, then it's going to give the next set of album details. So for this example, so we're going to have one button. On click of that button, we are going to increment this ID. And whenever the ID gets updated, we need to update this data with the newer ID. Okay. So let's create one button. Button get next album. Okay. So we are going to have one function, say increment ID. So in the increment ID, what we are going to do, we are going to increment our ID, current ID plus 1. So on click of this button, and click, we are calling this function. Okay. So now, so whenever we are clicking this button, we are incrementing this ID, but we need to call this API once this ID gets updated, right? So for that, we are going to add this ID as a dependency in our user. So what this will do, right? So whenever there is a change in ID, so this state value, this use effect will get called. And as soon as our ID gets changed, we are going to fire this API. And once this API is successful, we are updating the state data. So let's see. So now if you see, we have an ID 1 and the title. So now I'm going to click this next album. See, as soon as I click the next, so now we made an API call and our ID got updated to 2 and we got the newer details. So as soon as you click, we are actually showing a dynamic details. Okay. So I hope you are now clear about how to handle the APIs using the use effect. Thank you.